I found the foreclosure notice taped to my front door on a Tuesday afternoon in March 2025, exactly 3 days after I returned from a 6-month deployment to Ramstein Air Base in Germany. The envelope was weathered and faded, clearly sitting there for weeks, maybe months. My hands shook as I tore it open, still wearing my uniform, my duffel bag abandoned on the porch beside me. "Final notice of foreclosure sale," the header screamed in bold red letters. "Property located at 4782 Meadowbrook Lane, Fairfax County, Virginia, has been sold at public auction on February 14, 2025, to satisfy outstanding debts owed to the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association." I read it 3 times before the words actually registered. They sold my house, the house I bought with my own money 5 years ago, the house where I kept every memory of my late wife Sarah, who died of cancer 2 years before I deployed. They sold it while I was serving my country overseas. My name is Kevin Anderson, captain in the United States Air Force, and I work as a Judge Advocate General Officer. For those who don't know, that means I'm a military lawyer. I prosecute and defend service members in courts martial, advise commanders on legal issues, and handle everything from administrative law to international agreements. I knew the law inside and out, and I knew that what the Meadowbrook Estates HOA just did was so illegal it made my blood boil. I grabbed my phone and called the number listed on the foreclosure notice. A woman answered on the 3rd ring, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Meadowbrook Estates HOA. This is Brenda speaking. How may I help you?" "This is Captain Kevin Anderson, owner of 4782 Meadowbrook Lane. I just received a foreclosure notice stating my property was sold at auction. I need an immediate explanation." There was a pause, then the sound of keyboard clicking. "Oh yes, Mr. Anderson. Your property was sold to satisfy a debt of $18,473 in unpaid HOA dues, late fees, legal fees, and assessment charges. I was deployed overseas. I'm active duty military. Do you understand the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act?" Another pause, longer this time. "I'll need to transfer you to our president, Mrs. Patricia Blackwell. Please hold." The hold music was some instrumental version of a pop song I didn't recognize. I paced my porch, watching my neighbors across the street peek through their curtains. The Johnsons, an elderly couple who had always been kind to me. I wondered if they knew what happened. "This is Patricia Blackwell." The voice that came on the line was sharp, clipped, and completely lacking in warmth. "I understand you have concerns about the foreclosure process." "Concerns?" I kept my voice level, using the same controlled tone I employed in the courtroom. "Mrs. Blackwell, I'm an active duty Air Force officer. I was deployed to Germany for the past 6 months. Under the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act, you cannot foreclose on a service member's property while they're on active duty. What you did is a federal crime." "We sent multiple notices to your property address," she said, her tone defensive. "You failed to respond to any of them. The HOA has rules, Mr. Anderson, and those rules apply to everyone, military or not. Did you attempt to verify whether I was on active duty? We are not required to investigate the personal circumstances of every delinquent homeowner. Actually, under federal law, you are. Before initiating foreclosure proceedings against anyone, you're required to check with the Department of Defense to determine if they're on active duty. Did you do that?" Silence. "Mrs. Blackwell, did your HOA check with the DOD before selling my house?" Our attorney handled the legal aspects of the foreclosure. Any questions about procedure should be directed to him. "I want the name and contact information for your attorney, the name of the person who purchased my property at auction, and copies of every notice you claim to have sent me. I want all of that within 24 hours. "I'll see what I can do." Her voice had gone cold. "Is there anything else?" "Yes. I want the minutes from every board meeting where my property was discussed, copies of your HOA bylaws and covenants, and a complete accounting of the alleged $18,000 debt. I also want to know why my mortgage company wasn't notified of this foreclosure, since they hold the first lien on the property." I could practically hear her teeth grinding through the phone. "I'll have our attorney contact you." "Make sure he does. And Mrs. Blackwell? I'm a JAG officer. I know exactly what laws you broke. The only question now is whether this gets resolved quietly or becomes a federal case." She hung up without saying goodbye. I stood on my porch for a long moment, staring at the door I could no longer legally enter. Then I pulled out my phone again and started making calls. First to my mortgage company, First Virginia Bank, where a very confused representative informed me that yes, my mortgage was current, I had automatic payments set up, and they had never been notified of any foreclosure proceedings. That was another violation. Foreclosing HOAs are required to notify all lien holders. Next, I called my commanding officer, Colonel Marcus Hayes, and explained the situation. He was furious on my behalf and immediately authorized me to take emergency leave to handle the legal crisis. Then, I called the JAG office at the Pentagon and spoke with Major Lisa Chen, who specialized in SCRA cases. "Kevin, they're screwed," she said bluntly after I explained everything. "This is textbook SCRA violation. Not only can they not foreclose while you're on active duty, but they can't even initiate proceedings without court approval. Did you get any court summons?" "Nothing. I haven't been to the house in 6 months. If they sent anything, it's probably inside in a pile of mail." "Doesn't matter. Service of process on active duty military requires actual notice, not just taping something to a door. What do you want to do?" "I want my house back. I want these charges dismissed. I want them to pay my legal fees, and I want the people responsible held accountable. I'll draft a complaint. We'll file in federal court. SCRA violations carry serious penalties, including fines and potential jail time for willful violations. If you can prove they knew you were military and proceeded anyway, this could get very ugly for them." Good. I spent the rest of the afternoon documenting everything. I took photos of the foreclosure notice, the date stamp on the envelope, my front door, my neighbors' houses. I drove to the Fairfax County Courthouse and pulled all the public records related to the foreclosure. The file was thin, but what was there was damning. The foreclosure petition had been filed on November 3, 2024, while I was in Germany. It listed the debt as starting from unpaid dues going back 18 months, which would have been around May 2023. I pulled out my own records, which I kept meticulously organized in both paper and digital formats. Every single HOA payment from May 2023 through my deployment date was documented. Canceled checks, bank statements, automatic payment confirmations, all paid in full and on time. The special assessment they claimed I owed was for a neighborhood pool renovation. I checked the HOA bylaws. Special assessments required a vote by homeowners and 60 days' notice. I found no record of any vote, and certainly no notice. The legal fees they charged were astronomical, $18,000 in total debt, but only $3,000 in actual HOA dues. The rest was penalties, interest, attorney fees, and administrative charges that seemed to multiply like rabbits. I photographed every document, uploaded everything to cloud storage, and created a detailed timeline. This wasn't just an SCRA violation. This was fraud. That evening, I checked into a hotel near the base. I couldn't stay in my house since, legally, I didn't own it anymore. The thought made me sick. All of Sarah's things were still in there. Her clothes in the closet, her books on the shelves, her favorite coffee mug in the kitchen cabinet. I had left everything exactly as it was when she died, planning to sort through it when I returned from deployment. Now, strangers owned the space where she took her last breath. The next morning, I returned to the house early. A locksmith van was parked in my driveway, and a woman in her late 40s was standing on my porch directing 2 men as they changed the locks. She was exactly what you'd picture when someone says HOA Karen. Blonde highlighted hair and a short, angular cut, designer athleisure wear, oversized sunglasses, and an expression like she smelled something rotten. "Excuse me," I said, walking up the driveway in my service uniform. "What are you doing?" She turned to look at me with barely concealed disdain. "This is private property. You need to leave." "This is my house." "Not according to the county records. This property was legally purchased at auction 3 weeks ago. I'm the new owner, and you're trespassing." My jaw tightened. "And you are?" "Patricia Blackwell. I'm the president of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA, and as of February 14th, I'm also the owner of this property." Of course she was. The HOA president bought my house at her own foreclosure auction. The conflict of interest was so blatant it would have been funny if it wasn't ruining my life. Mrs. Blackwell, I'm an active duty Air Force officer. I was deployed overseas when you conducted this foreclosure. What you did violates federal law. She waved her hand dismissively. I've been advised by our attorney that the foreclosure was completely legal. You failed to pay your dues and respond to notices. Actions have consequences. Did your attorney mention the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act? He mentioned that being in the military doesn't exempt you from following HOA rules. Actually, it does. Federal law supersedes HOA bylaws. You cannot foreclose on active duty service members without a court order, which you don't have. You cannot purchase property at an auction you organized as HOA president without massive conflict of interest. And you definitely cannot change the locks on property that was illegally foreclosed. She pulled off her sunglasses and gave me a look that could have frozen hell. Listen, Mr. Anderson, I don't know what you think you're going to accomplish here, but the sale is final. I paid good money for this property at a legal auction. If you have a problem with that, take it up with a lawyer. I am a lawyer. I'm a judge advocate general officer with the United States Air Force. And by the end of this week, you're going to wish you'd done your due diligence before stealing a service member's home. Her face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you of the legal consequences of your actions. I'll be filing a federal lawsuit by end of business today. I strongly suggest you contact your attorney and tell him to start preparing a defense for willful SCRA violations, fraud, and about a dozen other charges I'm still compiling. This is harassment. I'm calling the police. Please do. I'd love to explain to the Fairfax County Police Department what happened here. She pulled out her phone and dialed. While she spoke to the dispatcher in a high, agitated voice about a threatening trespasser, I took more photos. The locksmith guys looked uncomfortable, whispering to each other and glancing between Patricia and me. 2 police cruisers arrived within 10 minutes. I stood calmly on the sidewalk, my military ID and orders already in hand. The first officer out was a sergeant named Morrison, a guy in his mid-30s with a no-nonsense expression. "What's going on here?" he asked. Patricia rushed over immediately. "Officer, this man is trespassing on my property and threatening me. I need him removed immediately." Morrison looked at me. "Sir, what's your side?" I handed him my military ID and my deployment orders. "Sergeant Morrison, I'm Captain Kevin Anderson, United States Air Force, Judge Advocate General Corps. This is my property. I purchased it in 2020. I was deployed to Germany from September 2024 through March 2025. While I was overseas, the HOA foreclosed on my property and sold it at auction in violation of the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act. Mrs. Blackwell purchased the property at her own auction despite being the HOA president, which is fraud. I returned home 3 days ago to find a foreclosure notice on my door." Morrison examined my documents carefully, then looked at Patricia. "Madam, do you have documentation of the foreclosure?" She fumbled with her designer purse and pulled out a folder. "Here's the deed transfer. Recorded with the county on February 15th. The property is legally mine." Morrison looked through the papers, then back at me. "Did you get notice of the foreclosure proceedings?" "No, Sergeant. I was in Germany. Any notices sent to this address were not received because I was deployed. The SCRA requires actual notice to service members and court approval before foreclosure, neither of which happened." The second officer, younger and clearly less experienced, spoke up. "Is that true? They can't foreclose on military people?" "Not without a court order," Morrison confirmed. He turned to Patricia. "Madam, did you obtain a court order before foreclosing?" "Our attorney handled everything legally. This is a civil matter, not a police issue." Morrison nodded slowly. "You're right that it's primarily civil, but if there's fraud involved, that's criminal. Captain Anderson, what do you want to do here?" "I want to access my property to retrieve my belongings, particularly my late wife's personal effects. I want it documented that Mrs. Blackwell changed the locks on illegally foreclosed property, and I want a police report filed detailing this incident so I have official documentation for my federal lawsuit." "I'm not letting him into my house," Patricia said shrilly. "He could steal anything and claim it was his." "It is my house," I said, my patience wearing thin. Everything in there belongs to me. My furniture, my clothes, my wife's belongings, my personal documents. Mrs. Blackwell has been the owner for 3 weeks. She has no possessions in the property." Morrison considered this. "Madam, has the property been transferred into your possession? Are your belongings inside?" "Well, no, not yet. I was just changing the locks today to secure it." "Then all the property inside belongs to Captain Anderson. Sir, I can escort you inside to retrieve your belongings." "Absolutely not," Patricia snapped. "I have legal ownership." "Madam, legal ownership is in dispute due to potential SCRA violations. Until a court determines rightful ownership, the personal property inside belongs to its original owner. I can either escort Captain Anderson inside peacefully, or we can wait for a judge to issue an emergency order, which will take about 2 hours and will absolutely be granted given his military status and deployment records." Patricia's face turned red. "This is outrageous. I paid $42,000 for this property." That caught my attention. "You paid $42,000 for a house worth $350,000? At auction, that's how foreclosure sales work." The scope of the fraud suddenly became clear. She engineered a foreclosure on bogus charges, purchased the property at her own auction for a fraction of its value, and probably planned to flip it for a massive profit. My house was worth at least $300,000 on the current market. She was trying to steal $300,000 from a deployed service member. Morrison seemed to reach the same conclusion. His expression hardened. "Madam, step aside. Captain Anderson, I'll escort you inside. Officer Williams, start a report documenting everything we've observed here." Patricia sputtered protests, but Morrison was done listening. He walked with me to the front door, where the locksmith had just finished installing the new lock. "Can you open this?" Morrison asked him. The locksmith, clearly wanting no part of this drama, nodded and unlocked the door. I stepped inside my house for the first time in 6 months, and the wave of emotion nearly knocked me over. Everything was exactly as I left it. Sarah's reading glasses on the end table by her favorite chair, the photos of us together on the mantel, the smell of home, stale from being closed up but still familiar. "Take your time," Morrison said quietly. "Document everything with photos before you pack. I'll keep Mrs. Blackwell outside." I spent the next 3 hours methodically photographing every room, every belonging, every piece of evidence that this was my home and my life. Then I started packing. Clothes, documents, Sarah's jewelry box, our wedding album, her grandmother's china. The things that couldn't be replaced. My neighbor from across the street, Mr. Johnson, came over while I was loading boxes into my rental car. He was a retired Marine, early 70s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Kevin, I'm so sorry," he said. "We didn't know what to do. Patricia came around a few months ago saying you'd abandoned the property and weren't paying your dues. She had the foreclosure notice posted, and when no one responded, they held the auction right here in the neighborhood clubhouse. Only 3 people even showed up. She bought it with no competition." "Did anyone mention that I was deployed?" "I told her myself. I said you were Air Force and overseas. She said that didn't matter, you still owed the fees." "Mr. Johnson, would you be willing to sign a statement saying you informed Mrs. Blackwell I was on active duty before the foreclosure?" His face hardened. "Absolutely. That woman has been a nightmare for this neighborhood. She fines people for grass being a 1/4 inch too long. She banned a kid from having a basketball hoop because she said it was unsightly. And she spent $20,000 of HOA money renovating the clubhouse that nobody uses. A lot of folks will be happy to see her taken down a peg. I'll need all the support I can get. This is going federal. You let me know what you need. We take care of our veterans around here, even if the HOA doesn't." By evening, I had 3 cars full of belongings stored at the hotel and a lockbox full of documents. I also had signed statements from 4 neighbors confirming they told Patricia I was on active duty military before the foreclosure. That proved willful violation of the SCRA, which carried criminal penalties. The next morning, I met with Major Chen at the Pentagon. She had already drafted a comprehensive complaint against the Meadowbrook Estates HOA, Patricia Blackwell personally, and the attorney who handled the foreclosure, a guy named Robert Sterling from some strip mall law firm in Arlington. "This is even worse than I thought," Lisa said, reviewing my evidence. "The self-dealing alone is grounds for voiding the sale. Add in the SCRA violations, the fraudulent debt calculations, the lack of proper notice, and the failure to notify the mortgage holder, and you have about 15 different legal violations. We can file this in federal court under SCRA provisions, which gives us a lot of leverage. What are we looking at for outcomes? Best case? The sale gets voided, you get your house back, they pay your attorney fees and damages, and the responsible parties face criminal charges. Worst case? The sale still gets voided, but you get tangled up in months of litigation getting everything sorted out. File it. I want everyone involved to understand that you don't steal from service members. The complaint was filed that afternoon in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. We sued for violation of the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment, and requested both compensatory and punitive damages. We also requested an emergency temporary restraining order preventing Patricia from selling, renting, or otherwise disposing of the property until the case was resolved. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 3 days later, which meant I had 72 hours to prepare. I spent every waking moment gathering evidence, organizing documents, and preparing my testimony. I also filed complaints with the Virginia State Bar against Robert Sterling for his role in the illegal foreclosure, and with the Virginia Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation against the HOA Management Company. The night before the hearing, my phone rang. Unknown number. Captain Anderson? A man's voice, smooth and professional. Speaking. This is Robert Sterling, attorney for the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. I've been reviewing your complaint, and I think we can resolve this without expensive litigation. I'm listening. My clients are willing to rescind the foreclosure sale and restore your ownership of the property. In exchange, you agree to drop all legal claims and pay the outstanding HOA, dues, and assessments, which currently total $6,000. I almost laughed. Mr. Sterling, your clients created a fake debt of $18,000, illegally foreclosed while I was deployed, committed fraud by having the HOA president purchase the property at auction, and violated multiple federal laws. And you think I'm going to pay them $6,000? Captain, I understand you're upset, but litigation is expensive and time-consuming. This offer gets you your house back immediately. Here's my counteroffer. Mrs. Blackwell signs a quitclaim deed returning full ownership to me by noon tomorrow. The HOA dismisses all alleged debts and assessments. They pay $50,000 in damages and attorney fees, and everyone involved provides sworn statements about their actions for potential criminal proceedings. That's my only offer. There was a long pause. That's completely unreasonable. Then I'll see you in court tomorrow, Mr. Sterling. And fair warning, I'm also filing a bar complaint against you for assisting in SCRA violations. You should have known better. He hung up. The hearing was held in Judge Martha Rodriguez's courtroom at 10 a.m. Judge Rodriguez was a former Navy JAG officer herself, which I considered good luck. She understood military culture and had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Major Chen and I sat at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, Robert Sterling sat with Patricia Blackwell and another woman I didn't recognize, probably an HOA board member. Patricia wore a conservative navy suit and a lot less makeup than when I saw her at my house. She was trying to look professional and sympathetic. It wasn't working. Judge Rodriguez took the bench, and we all stood. She was in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd already read the entire file and formed opinions. This is an emergency hearing on plaintiff's motion for a temporary restraining order in the matter of Anderson versus Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Mr. Sterling, I've reviewed the complaint and the evidence submitted by Captain Anderson. Before we begin, I have a very simple question. Did your clients verify whether Captain Anderson was on active duty before initiating foreclosure proceedings? Sterling stood. Your Honor, we sent multiple notices to the property address in accordance with Virginia foreclosure law. That's not what I asked. Did you check with the Department of Defense to verify his military status? The HOA is not required to investigate every homeowner's employment status. Judge Rodriguez's expression went icy. Under the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act, before foreclosing on any property, The foreclosing party must file an affidavit stating whether the debtor is on active military duty. Did your clients file such an affidavit? Sterling shuffled papers. Your Honor, I would need to review the foreclosure file. I've already reviewed it, Mr. Sterling. There is no such affidavit. In fact, there's no mention of military service anywhere in the foreclosure proceedings. This is a clear SCRA violation. Your Honor, if there were technical deficiencies in the paperwork. Technical deficiencies, Mr. Sterling, the SCRA has been federal law since 1940. Its requirements are clear and unambiguous. Captain Anderson was deployed overseas, serving his country, while your client sold his house out from under him. This isn't a technical deficiency. This is exactly the kind of abuse the SCRA was designed to prevent, Patricia whispered urgently to Sterling. He nodded and stood again. Your Honor, my clients were not aware of Captain Anderson's military service or deployment. If they had known, they certainly would have followed proper procedures. Your Honor, Major Chen stood. We have sworn affidavits from 4 neighbors stating they personally informed Mrs. Blackwell that Captain Anderson was on active duty and deployed overseas. This was not an innocent mistake. This was a willful violation. Judge Rodriguez looked at Patricia. Mrs. Blackwell, stand up, please. Patricia stood, her face pale. Mrs. Blackwell, did neighbors inform you that Captain Anderson was on active duty military? There may have been some mention, Your Honor, but I didn't think it was relevant to the foreclosure process. You didn't think it was relevant. Judge Rodriguez's voice could have cut glass. You didn't think that federal law protecting deployed service members was relevant when you were selling one's house. Our attorney said the foreclosure was legal. Your attorney should have his license suspended, and that's a process I suspect is already underway. She looked at Sterling, who had gone pale. Mrs. Blackwell, is it true that you purchased Captain Anderson's property at the foreclosure auction? Yes, Your Honor, but that was... You're the president of the HOA that initiated the foreclosure, correct? Yes. And you then purchased the property at your own auction for $42,000, despite it being worth approximately $350,000? The auction was legally conducted. I simply made the winning bid. How many other bidders were there? Patricia hesitated. It was the only bid. So you engineered a foreclosure on a deployed service member, held an auction where you were the only bidder, and purchased his house for 12% of its market value. Does that about sum it up? When you put it that way, Mrs. Blackwell, there is no other way to put it. This is one of the most egregious cases of HOA overreach and SCRA violation I've seen in my 15 years on the bench. Judge Rodriguez turned to Sterling. Mr. Sterling, I am granting the plaintiff's motion for a temporary restraining order. Mrs. Blackwell is hereby prohibited from selling, renting, mortgaging, or otherwise encumbering the property located at 4782 Meadowbrook Lane. Furthermore, I am ordering her to execute a quitclaim deed restoring full ownership to Captain Anderson within 24 hours. Sterling jumped to his feet. Your Honor, that effectively decides the case without trial. The case is decided, Mr. Sterling. The SCRA violation is clear, the fraud is obvious, and the conflict of interest is blatant. The only question remaining is how much your clients are going to pay in damages. We'll address that at the full hearing scheduled for... She checked her calendar. April 15th. That gives both sides time to prepare for the damages phase. But make no mistake, Captain Anderson is getting his house back, and the defendants are going to pay dearly for this disaster. Your Honor, I request a stay pending appeal. Denied. This order is effective immediately. Mrs. Blackwell, you have until this time tomorrow to execute the quitclaim deed and vacate the property. If you fail to comply, I will hold you in contempt of court. Are we clear? Patricia nodded, tears streaming down her face. The sympathetic act was in full force now, but Judge Rodriguez wasn't having it. Captain Anderson, the judge said, her voice softening, I apologize on behalf of the Commonwealth of Virginia for what you've endured. This should never have happened, and I intend to ensure everyone responsible faces appropriate consequences. The property is yours again. I'll also be referring this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. I stood. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for your service, Captain. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down, and just like that, I had my house back. Major Chen and I walked out of the courtroom together while Sterling and Patricia huddled in frantic conversation behind us. That went better than expected, Lisa said with a satisfied expression. Judge Rodriguez doesn't mess around. Former Navy JAG. She understands exactly what the SCRA is for and why violations are so serious. The fact that Patricia bought the house herself really sealed it. It's such obvious fraud that there was no way Rodriguez was going to let it stand. What happens next? Patricia executes the quitclaim deed by tomorrow at 10 a.m., or she gets arrested for contempt. The deed gets recorded with the county, and you're officially the owner again. Then we prepare for the damages hearing. I'm thinking we ask for $100,000 in compensatory damages for emotional distress, loss of use of property, and costs incurred, plus attorney fees, which, given this is federal litigation, could be another $50,000. I want them to hurt, Lisa. What they did was unconscionable. They will. Rodriguez is going to throw the book at them. Plus, the criminal referral means the U.S. attorney might file charges. SCRA violations can carry fines up to $100,000 and up to a year in jail. That evening, I got a call from a reporter at the Washington Post. Apparently, someone at the courthouse had tipped them off about the case, and they wanted to do a story about HOA abuse of military service members. Captain Anderson, our readers would be very interested in your experience, the reporter said. HOA overreach is a growing problem nationwide, and your case illustrates some serious issues. I'm willing to talk, but nothing that could jeopardize the ongoing litigation. Of course. Can you walk me through what happened? I gave her the basic timeline, keeping strictly to facts that were already in the public court record. She asked good questions and seemed genuinely outraged on my behalf. This is going to be a front-page story, she said. People need to know this is happening. The story ran 2 days later with the headline, HOA sold deployed airman's home in illegal foreclosure. Judge orders property returned. It included my photo in uniform, a picture of my house, and quotes from Judge Rodriguez's hearing. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My phone started ringing constantly. Other reporters wanting interviews, veterans advocacy groups offering support, other service members sharing their own HOA horror stories. A lieutenant colonel from Fort Bragg, whose HOA fined him $5,000 for parking his military vehicle in his own driveway. A Navy spouse whose HOA threatened foreclosure because her deployed husband's grass was too long. The stories went on and on. The day after the article ran, Patricia executed the quitclaim deed. Her attorney delivered it to the courthouse at 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the deadline. The deed was recorded by noon, and once again, I legally owned my house. I returned to the property that afternoon with Mr. Johnson and a few other neighbors who came to help. The locks had been changed again, this time by my own locksmith. Walking through my front door as the rightful owner felt like exhaling after holding my breath for weeks. "Welcome home, son," Mr. Johnson said, shaking my hand. "I'm glad this is working out." "It's not over yet. The damages hearing is still coming, and potentially criminal charges." "Good. Patricia has needed a reality check for years. Maybe this will make her think twice before abusing her authority." Over the next few weeks, I settled back into the house and prepared for the damages hearing. Major Chen and I built an extensive case documenting every cost I incurred because of the illegal foreclosure. Hotel bills, storage fees, rental car costs, moving expenses, time off work, emotional distress. We also documented the market value of the property versus what Patricia paid at auction, showing the attempted theft. But the real earthquake came from an unexpected direction. The Virginia Attorney General's office launched an investigation into the Meadowbrook Estates HOA's financial records. Apparently, our case raised red flags about Patricia's management, and when investigators started digging, they found a mess. Patricia had been embezzling from the HOA for 3 years. She created fake invoices for maintenance and repairs, paid them to a shell company she controlled, and pocketed the money. The pool renovation that triggered the special assessment never happened. The $20,000 spent on clubhouse renovations was actually $8,000 in real costs, and $12,000 in kickbacks to Patricia. In total, she stole over $90,000 from the homeowners. The discovery changed everything. Patricia wasn't just an overzealous HOA president. She was a criminal who saw my deployment as an opportunity to steal a valuable property and hide her embezzlement by claiming the HOA needed money. The U.S. Attorney's Office filed federal charges in early April, 2 counts of willful violation of the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act, 1 count of wire fraud, and 1 count of theft of government property, since my VA loan meant the house was partially secured by federal funds. The Virginia Attorney General filed state charges for embezzlement and fraud. The damages hearing proceeded as scheduled on April 15th. Judge Rodriguez's courtroom was packed with reporters, veterans advocates, and curious members of the public. Patricia sat at the defense table in handcuffs, having been denied bail due to flight risk after investigators found she'd purchased a one-way ticket to Costa Rica. Major Chen presented our damages case methodically. Hotel costs, $4,000. Storage and moving, $3,000. Rental car, $800. Lost wages and leave time, $6,000. Cost of hiring professional organizers to sort through Sarah's belongings that I'd intended to handle myself, $2,000. Emotional distress from losing my late wife's possessions and home, $50,000. Your Honor, Captain Anderson returned from serving his country overseas to find he'd been robbed by the people who were supposed to manage his neighborhood, Lisa argued. He lost access to his home, to his late wife's belongings, to his sense of security and stability. The emotional toll cannot be overstated. He's been diagnosed with acute stress disorder by a military psychologist as a direct result of this ordeal. That part was true. The stress of fighting for my house while dealing with grief over Sarah had triggered symptoms severe enough that I was seeing a therapist twice a week. Sterling, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past month, made a half-hearted argument about damages being excessive. Judge Rodriguez cut him off. Mr. Sterling, your client stole from a deployed service member. She violated federal law, committed fraud, and embezzled from her neighbors. The only question before me is how much to award, not whether to award damages at all. I find Captain Anderson is entitled to full compensatory damages in the amount of $65,800. I'm also awarding punitive damages in the amount of $200,000, which will be paid jointly and severally by Mrs. Blackwell and the HOA. Sterling's mouth fell open. Your Honor, the HOA doesn't have that kind of money. Then the HOA can assess its members or dissolve and distribute assets. I don't particularly care which. The HOA is responsible for the actions of its president, and the homeowners who elected Mrs. Blackwell can deal with the consequences of that choice. Your Honor. Additionally, I'm awarding attorney fees in the amount of $78,000. Mrs. Blackwell, the total judgment against you is $343,800. You can pay it, or Captain Anderson can seize your assets and wages for the rest of your natural life. Those are your options. Patricia sobbed at the defense table. I felt no sympathy. She tried to steal everything from me while I was serving overseas. Now she would pay for it. One more thing, Judge Rodriguez said. Mr. Sterling, I'm reporting your conduct in this case to the Virginia State Bar with a recommendation for suspension. An attorney of your experience should have known the SCRA requirements. Your failure to verify Captain Anderson's military status before proceeding with foreclosure is inexcusable. This hearing is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I made a brief statement. I'm grateful to Judge Rodriguez and the federal court system for recognizing the serious violations that occurred. Service members deploy to defend our country, and the law protects them from being victimized while they're gone. The Servicemembers Civil Relief Act exists for exactly this reason. HOAs, creditors, and landlords need to understand that federal law applies to them, and violations carry serious consequences. I hope my case prevents other military families from experiencing what I went through. The questions came fast. How did I feel about the judgment? Vindicated and relieved. What message did I have for other service members facing HOA issues? Document everything and don't be afraid to fight back. What did I think should happen to Patricia Blackwell? That's up to the criminal courts. The criminal trials happened over the summer. The federal case went first. Patricia's defense attorney tried to argue she didn't understand the SCRA and made an honest mistake. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney James Park, demolished that argument. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this was not a mistake," Park said in his closing argument. "Four neighbors testified they personally told Mrs. Blackwell that Captain Anderson was on active duty. She acknowledged in court that she knew. She proceeded with the foreclosure anyway because she saw an opportunity. A deployed service member, a house worth $350,000, and a chance to buy it for $42,000. She gambled that he wouldn't find out until it was too late, or that he wouldn't have the resources to fight back. She gambled wrong." The jury deliberated for 90 minutes before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Patricia was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, and ordered to pay the full judgment plus an additional $50,000 fine to the United States. The state embezzlement trial was almost anticlimactic after that. The evidence was overwhelming. Fake invoices, bank records showing deposits to her personal accounts, testimony from contractors who never did the work they supposedly billed for. She was convicted on 12 counts of embezzlement and sentenced to another 4 years in state prison to run consecutively with her federal sentence. In total, Patricia Blackwell would spend 5.5 years behind bars and owe over $400,000 in fines, restitution, and judgments. Her house was seized and auctioned to pay her debts. Her husband divorced her. Her adult children stopped speaking to her. She lost everything, just as she tried to make me lose everything. The Meadowbrook Estates, HOA, dissolved in the aftermath. Too many homeowners were furious about the assessments needed to pay the judgment, and the whole organization imploded. The neighborhood still has basic maintenance and a voluntary neighborhood association, but no more mandatory HOA with power to foreclose. Mr. Johnson was elected the first president of the new voluntary association, and his first act was to pass a resolution supporting military families and promising to never pursue legal action against deployed service members. Robert Sterling was suspended from practicing law for 2 years by the Virginia State Bar. His strip mall practice closed, and last I heard, he was working as a legal consultant in some other state. Several other service members who found out about my case hired Major Chen to pursue their own claims against HOAs that had violated the SCRA. She won every single case. As for me, I'm still in my house. I finally sorted through Sarah's belongings, keeping what mattered and donating the rest to charity. Her favorite coffee mug sits on my desk as a reminder of her. The experience changed me, made me harder in some ways, but also more determined to protect others from similar abuse. I wrote an article for the Air Force Times about SCRA protections and what service members should do if they face HOA issues while deployed. I've spoken at JAG conferences about military consumer protection law. I've helped a dozen other service members navigate HOA disputes and foreclosure threats. Some good came from the nightmare. On a quiet evening in late summer, I sat on my porch watching the sunset over the neighborhood, the same porch where I found the foreclosure notice 7 months earlier. Mr. Johnson walked over with 2 beers. "Thought you might want some company," he said, handing me a bottle. "Thanks." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. "You know, a lot of folks around here learned something from all this," he finally said. "People pay attention now. They ask questions. When the new association proposed any kind of fee increase, everyone demanded full accounting and documentation. That kind of oversight should have happened years ago." Patricia got away with it because nobody was watching, and because people assume HOA boards know what they're doing. Turns out giving someone a little bit of power and no oversight is a recipe for disaster. He took a long drink. "I'm sorry about what you went through, Kevin. You didn't deserve it." "No, I didn't. But I'm glad I had the knowledge and resources to fight back. A lot of service members wouldn't know where to start. That's why those articles you wrote and the talks you give matter. You're making sure others don't get steamrolled." We finished our beers and talked about nothing in particular. Baseball, the weather, his grandkids, normal things. The kind of peaceful evening conversation I thought I'd lost forever when I found that foreclosure notice. Later that night, I got an email from Major Chen. Another Air Force member stationed in Japan had contacted her about an HOA in Florida trying to foreclose on her condo. Lisa was taking the case and wanted to know if I'd consult as an expert witness, given my experience. I replied immediately, "Absolutely. Let me know what you need." The fight wasn't over. There would be more Patricia Blackwells out there, more HOAs that thought they were above federal law, more service members who needed help. But now there was precedent, case law, and a network of JAG officers and attorneys ready to protect military families. I walked through my house, touching the walls, looking at the photos, feeling the weight of ownership. My house, my home, the place Sarah and I built our life together, the place I thought I'd lost forever. It was mine again, legally and completely. In my office, I pulled out the file with all the case documents, every notice, every motion, every court order. I'd kept everything as a reminder of what happened and how I fought back. On top of the pile was Judge Rodriguez's final order, the one that awarded me damages and made Patricia pay for her crimes. I added a new document to the file, a printed copy of the email from the Air Force member in Florida who needed help. Her name was Captain Michelle Torres, and her story was painfully similar to mine. Deployed overseas, came home to foreclosure threats, HOA, claiming she owed thousands in bogus fees. I started drafting a response detailing the SCRA protections she could invoke, the evidence she needed to gather, and the legal arguments that worked in my case. As I typed, I realized this was my purpose now, not just to win my own case, but to make sure every service member knew their rights and had someone in their corner. The military teaches you a lot of things. Honor, courage, commitment, how to follow orders, how to lead troops, how to make impossible decisions under pressure. But maybe the most important thing it teaches is that you never leave anyone behind. When someone needs help, you help them. When someone's in trouble, you fight for them. Patricia Blackwell tried to victimize me because she thought a deployed service member would be an easy target. She was wrong. And now, every HOA in America had case law showing exactly how wrong she was. The Anderson decision became required reading at JAG schools. SCRA training programs used my case as a cautionary tale for creditors and HOAs. Military legal assistance offices hung copies of Judge Rodriguez's orders on their walls. One person standing up made a difference. I finished the email to Captain Torres and hit send. Then I closed my laptop and walked out to the back deck. The night was clear, stars visible even through the suburban light pollution. Somewhere out there, service members were deployed, serving in dangerous places, trusting that home would be waiting when they returned. Because of cases like mine, that trust was a little more secure. The law protected them, and attorneys like Major Chen and me would enforce that protection. HOAs would think twice before trying to foreclose on military families. Scam artists like Patricia would face real consequences. I raised my beer bottle in a silent toast to Sarah. She would have been proud of how I fought back, how I turned a nightmare into something that helped others. She always said I had a strong sense of justice, sometimes too strong. But in this case, that stubbornness saved not just my house, but potentially dozens of other military families. The neighborhood was quiet. Lights on in houses, families settling in for the evening. Normal, peaceful suburban life. The kind of life service members deploy to protect, and the kind of life they deserve to come home to. I went back inside, locked the doors, and set the alarm system I'd installed after getting the house back. Tomorrow I'd call Captain Torres and walk her through her options. Next week I had a speaking engagement at Maxwell Air Force Base about military consumer protection. Next month, another case consultation for a Marine whose HOA was harassing his wife while he was deployed to Okinawa. The work would continue. But tonight, I was home. My home. Hard-won, legally secured, and finally at peace. I fell asleep in my own bed, in my own house, knowing that justice had been served and that I'd used my training and knowledge to protect not just myself, but everyone who would come after me. The JAG Corps taught me to be a warrior in the courtroom, and I'd proven that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with weapons, but with law, evidence, and an unwavering commitment to doing what's right. Patricia Blackwell tried to take everything from me. Instead, she lost everything herself and created legal precedent that would protect countless others. That was justice. That was victory. And that was exactly what she deserved.